So that brings us to the third step in the process, which is the execute portion. So like I said before, this is the part where you really just look in the mirror and say, I want it badly enough, let's go get it, right? So you all have kind of said that the next step for you guys hopefully is an ASM, right? Anybody not have ASM as their next desired position? Perfect. So if ASM is your next goal, how many of you guys have looked at the job responsibilities, job description of an ASM? You have, you said?
Read it, but it was a while ago.
Okay. So did everybody know that that's out there for you guys to all look at? So job description for every position in the company is available for anybody to look at all times. So why would that information be beneficial to you?
Know what you're going into.
Know what to expect, make sure it's the right role for you, right? You might think it's something completely different and not want it after you read the job description. What else?
Responsibilities that you will have moving up.
Okay. Well, and you need to know what you need to be good at and what, something you might not even have thought about as a job responsibility of that position that maybe you want to work it into your blueprint. Anything else? So when we look at job descriptions, there's another document that follows the job descriptions very, very, very closely, and that's the structured interview guide for that position. So when we say structured interview guide, the structured portion of it is the important part. So it's structured. It's the same questions for every candidate. There's follow-up questions to probe a little bit more if they're not answering. And it gives us as interviewers an idea of what we need to ask before we get in there. So why is it important that we use a structured interview guide instead of walk in the room and chat for an hour?
Consistency.
Yeah, consistency.
So tell me more about that. Why? Why does that matter?
You want to be consistent so you understand, like you said, it gives you a better idea, but you don't want to show any kind of, not ask him 3 questions and only ask her 2 questions. You
Sure.
want to be specific on how you do that. HR is kind of fussy about that. And then it also gives you a structured form of what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
You know?
So the consistency portion that he's talking about, so it's fair to everybody, right?
Sorry.
It gives, no, you're good. So it gives you, it's fair to everybody, it's more legally defensible if you want to look at it from an HR standpoint, right, James?
Yep. Damn lawyers.
He's using his active list.
Yes, he is.
I heard that, Courtney.
So it's fair to everybody. It's, like I said, it's easier for me as an interviewer to set up, I know what the next half hour is going to look like and everything that I have to ask. And it gives us a better idea because those questions are really, really tailored specifically to the job description of that position. It really does a good job of giving us the idea of who's going to be the best candidate. Make sense? So no matter which ASM position you're looking at, no matter which store, no matter what size of store, no matter how many ASMs are in the store, these are some of the main job descriptions and responsibilities of an ASM. So what jumps out to you guys from those? Motivating and hiring?
Yeah,
We talked about that already today, right?
not just someone that's breathing 25 miles every day.
Yeah, it doesn't say have a pulse on it.
Right.
Right. Any themes that you see in there?
Well, kind of revolves around store to get the best candidates.
Yeah.
Value.
Values wheels in a lot of that. And obviously there's a couple that are metric based, so delivers results, safety, manage operations and processes, but really the rest of them revolve around the people, right? So associates, customers, vendors, shareholders, it's all the people based. James said earlier, Crystal said earlier, we are a people business. So knowing that will help prepare you. Dang it, James.
Did you break it?
I might have.
Over in the bottom right.
I got it.
No, you can get one. There you go. That works.
So this is the ASM, it's listed as Assistant Store Manager in Training job description. But that really, really relates directly to the questions that you'll come across in your structured interview guide. Can anybody think back to, for some of you this might be thinking back further than others, but can anybody think back to the last time they went through and actually participated in a Home Depot interview, when you were on the side of being interviewed? So think about the questions that you were asked. What did they all have in common?
Customer service.
Customer service is a huge part of it, right? There's 5 or 6 words that almost every single question on an interview starts with. Anybody know what they are? Tell me a time. Specifically, describe for me a time.
Give me an example.
Give me an example of a time. So they're very, they're situationally based. They're experience-based questions, not personality-based. So you should never walk into a Home Depot interview and be asked, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be and why? Because I don't.
Nope.
Birch? Why birch?
I literally just threw that out there.
See, that's what people do for those questions, because I don't know. You could be an oak, strong.
Because I want to be really
Mighty and majestic.
So the questions are going to be very, like I said, situationally based, very experience based. Why is it important for us to know those questions for our business rather than the personality questions?
Make sure you can handle the position.
Absolutely. So if you, as a candidate, convince me as an interviewer that you successfully handled it somewhere else in a different position, different company, whatever it was, I'm going to be much more likely to think that you're going to be able to handle it again, right? So when you are preparing for an interview, there's a couple key things to do. The first one, like we talked about, is to really look in depth at that job description for the position that you are applying for. And understand, A, what's expected of you, which will then, B, let you know what type of questions are going to be asked as well. Then you want to come up with some pre-recorded, if you will, responses that are quickly and easily accessible, and you can keep them in your mind, and then try to tailor those toward those questions that are being asked of you. So if we go back looking at these skills that are required of an ASM, and knowing that that's a big part of the job description, what are some questions that you might get asked in a job interview? Adam, you're not allowed to answer.
Tell me the last time you helped a customer with a bad experience and how you handled that.
Yep. So how did you go above and beyond for a customer, or how did you take a bad experience and make it a great one?
Yeah.
Yep. So customer service is an expectation, right? That's a great question for that. You'll probably be asked that one.
Tell me a time when you helped resolve a conflict between associates.
Tell me about a time you helped resolve a conflict. It's a big part of the job. What else?
Tell me about how you helped make your store more profitable,
Okay.
or what you did to help make it more profitable.
Yep. That's a good one. How you delivered results. Has anybody in here ever conducted an interview, been part of hiring or associates? So there's a couple questions that are on almost every single interview guide that we have as a company. One of them is, tell me about a goal that you achieved that initially appeared to be too difficult to accomplish. Because we know that the higher that you get within the organization, the more stressors there's going to be, the more obstacles there's going to be, and we need to know that you're going to be able to overcome those. Accountability and development is a big piece, so a question for that might be, tell me about a time you took an underperforming associate and turned around their performance to become a top performer. Tell me about a time you held accountable somebody who wasn't performing, that sort of thing. So when you're looking at that job description, think about times that stuff has happened to you guys. Building a team is another big one that comes up a lot. Obviously, we need cohesive teams. So being able to come up with an example of a time that you put a team together for, let's say, overnight inventory prep, or really helped build the teamwork between sales and ops, or MET and sales floor, or any of that stuff, or even just to Randy's point, that's resolving conflict between your associates too, making that a more cohesive team as well. So then once you have those pre-recorded, easily accessible experiences that you can remember,
You get a new computer.
no, it's probably not that.
User error.
It must be, who was it that really had trouble with this thing? Situation, action, and results should be how you answer every question in an interview. So what does that mean? Anybody heard that before? Situation, action, results? So you've heard it, Lauren, what does it mean?
That's how you explain your answer to the question. You describe the situation, you put it into action as far as what you did, and then the results from that.
Good. So if you don't do it that way, you're much more likely to not actually answer the question, even if you think you are. So like she said, explain the situation. Doesn't have to be a 10 or 15 minute backstory for each answer, but just explain the situation. When you're talking about the action, an interviewer is really, really looking for what you specifically did, not the plan your store came up with or what your store manager told you to put into action. It's specifically what you did and how you contributed to that outcome. And then the results. I can't tell you guys how often somebody will give me a great interview question, answer. They'll spend 10 minutes talking about it perfectly, what the situation was, what they put into play, and then they don't tell me what happened. And I have to probe with, so what were the results of that? It's kind of frustrating, to be honest with you. So, situation, action, results will help you get the question answered fully. So now we get to watch a couple videos. These are mock interviews. The interviews are actually for MET, but make sure you pay attention to A, how well they answered the question, and then also look for mannerisms and things like eye contact, posture, stuff like that as you go. Go ahead.
To the customers.
So, what did he do well?
Eye contact.
Constant eye contact is always good.
He's engaged.
How so? What do you mean?
He was with, he was with it. He wasn't
Okay.
in a.
He explained directives.
Yep.
Okay.
Good response time, like you prepared.
He was definitely prepared. He didn't sit there for 20 seconds figuring out what he was going to think of. He also talked about how he took some time off to focus on community college, which helps to explain gaps in resumes, which is another thing that we always look at. So every question on a structured interview guide, we're given, we rate on a scale of 1 to 5, right? So 1, basically they didn't answer the question at all. 5, they answered it in a highly favorable manner. So where would you rate that?
4.
Okay. I think 3, 4. It's in that range for sure. So how would that have been a 5? What could he have said?
That he was given planograms and he filled them, focused, finished them in a timely manner.
Because his answer was really, well, my store manager always gave me the direction, I just kind of followed the plan, right?
Right.
So if you talk about how you take the initiative, you take the plan and run with it or make it better, we always talk about entrepreneurial spirit, right? Making plans better that we have. I think that definitely could have gotten into a 5. Next video, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And she's very happy today.
Good, good.
I like her.
Hire that woman. So, what do you guys think?
Talk yourself up too much.
Zero.
There's yeah. The shredder.
There you go.
So realistically though, what did she struggle with?
Eye contact, answering the question, have to think too hard about it.
Yep.
Like rambled on.
She rambled. She did not answer the question.
No,
No.
The question was, tell me what a time you asked questions to avoid a problem.
right, and
She explained the problem
she
she
explained
created.
how she
Yeah.
created it.
And then didn't even say, oh, but then I fixed it afterwards until he asked a probing
Right,
question.
right.
So she also had, I don't know if those were like her bracelets on, but there was like clicking going on every time she moved her arm. So that's a 1, is that what we're saying?
How about garbage?
Okay, fair enough. You know, when we talk about interviews, like James has said before, the biggest thing that a lot of us feel is nervousness, right? So it's okay to be nervous, but we've got to try however we can to minimize the effects of that nervousness. So what's the number one way to do that?
Practice.
Practice.
Practice. So what are different ways that you can practice your interview skills?
With a peer.
With a peer? That's a safe way to do it, right? Hopefully you guys all have peers in your store that you've got a relationship with that would make you comfortable enough to have that conversation with them.
If you're lucky like me, where your wife's an assistant manager, you can have her drill you.
There you go.
You talk with your store manager or ASNs or someone above you,
Yep.
you know, go through the interview.
A
Yep.
mock interview.
James's point, have those pre-recorded things ready to go. That's part of practice, so you can pull them out much more quickly. You don't sit there looking up to the left, or is it to the right? I don't remember which. One of them you're lying, or one of them you're thinking. I don't know. So what are some other things that we do to prepare for interviews? So think like day of, day before, what are the important things to remember?
Dress for it.
Dressed, well rested.
So how do you know how to dress for an interview?
Well, you always want to, you'll research what you're interviewing for. I mean, if you're interviewing to be a ditch digger, you're not going to wear a suit and tie.
Why not?
I mean, yeah.
It's
No,
ironic.
9 chances out of 10, you're not going to get hired. Because you are not, to me, you're not showing that you're able just to go out there and work.
Sure.
But you're making a first impression, shouldn't you always
But
show your
sometimes that
best?
first impression is not the proper impression.
James has a story about that.
I do have a story about that. Thanks, John. So,
Okay, what else? Preparation for an interview.
A little bit of the history of the corporation or store that you're.
Do research on it before so you can understand better. Okay? So what sort of, if you were interviewing outside of Home Depot, God forbid, what sort of stuff would you look for in research to understand about that company?
So like when they started, how they started, was
Okay.
it what they are now, how they developed into what they are now?
Okay?
And, you know, are they a regional place or is it national? What's their focus?
So if you were outside of Home Depot, applying for a job in Home Depot, and you did a little bit of research, what do you think you would find on our website that might tip you off to what some of the questions might be?
Yeah, yeah.
Mission statement, value
Yeah.
wheel, like that stuff is all public
Yeah,
knowledge
yeah,
for
they
pretty
say.
much every company.
Yeah.
So the more you know about that, the more insight it'll give you into how that interview is going to shape out. What else?
what about the people you're interviewing with? Should you find out information about them?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, possibly, right? Like what would you want to find out?
How long they've been there,
How long you been there, right? What else?
how they started.
How they started, right?
Positions.
Positions,
How long
right?
they've been in that position.
How long position, right? So if you didn't work for the company, have you guys ever heard of LinkedIn?
Yep.
Okay, so who can tell me what LinkedIn is?
It's basically a Facebook for professionals.
Professional.
Yeah.
It's Facebook without politics and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
kids'
Yeah.
videos, right? Right, although sometimes people
It's
do
not
post
always
those
without
things. It's not always with that, right?
Yeah.
Right? But LinkedIn is supposed to be a professional networking site, right? But it's a great place to go if you want to learn about what people have done, right? And you can link together with people so you can figure out how long they worked at other companies, what other connections they have. LinkedIn's a great source. Whenever I was interviewing for other companies, I always went there because then I can look and see where else they worked. It can also show you where they went to school. Maybe you have a connection that way. You might even know someone that they know, right? Those are all things that can help you network. Because do you think when you go in for an interview, they're looking at research about you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So if you ever, anyone have a LinkedIn account at all? Okay. Do you have a professional picture on there, or is it you at spring break '84? Okay, good, right?
Jamming out the Toto.
Jamming out to Africa, right?
The margarita.
Right? Some people on LinkedIn don't make that choice, right? Again, there's Facebook and there's LinkedIn. right? Let alone when you put it on Facebook and people find on there, right? But there's two different things. But always want to do research on the people that you're interviewing with. You always want to be able to do that, right? Because you can hopefully find a connection with them as well.
Other simple basic stuff for an interview, try to eat something beforehand. You don't want your stomach growling to interrupt you and throw you off your game. Try not to chew gum. Don't try not to. Don't chew gum in an interview. Right, James?
Yep.
It's been the topic of conversation before. What else? So at the end of an interview, you should also always be asked, what questions do you have for me? What sort of things can you guys throw out there that are beneficial? You
What-
should always have something.
What are some examples of people who have been successful in this position?
Great question.
What I can do to achieve that?
That's almost exactly one of the questions that I asked Dave Reptoy in my store manager interview.
Timelines.
And he answered with what?
Well, my question was what, you gotta play to his ego a little bit. So Dave, you've been with the company a long time. You've done great things. Congratulations, you're almost at 30 years, it's crazy. What are some of the things, because I'm sure you've seen great store managers, I'm sure you've seen some that maybe shouldn't have ever been promoted. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen newer store managers fall into that maybe I can avoid? And he answered with payroll, don't get yourself in payroll problems. And don't try to reinvent the wheel and always try to be shinier and better than your neighbor store down
How's your payroll this year? Sorry, too soon?
I hate that.
Too soon on that?
the road. A little too soon.
Seth, you have other questions? That's what
Oh,
we're
timelines. Usually they want to know, could you move or when could you move? And then on
Okay.
the other half, how soon will you be making a decision? Shall I contact you or shall I wait for you to contact you?
Sure. So what does it look like after today? Good question. Anything else? What about specific to that store? What are some of the things that you're looking for in a leader in this position right now, at this moment in your store? Is it LTSA you're struggling with? Do you need somebody who can make an impact on the pro business? Do you need somebody who can really coach and train specialty and selling skills, behaviors? What are you looking for in this position?